welcome to all our audiences here to the Entrepreneurship Summit 2025 and the ensuing awards in the evening. So this is the opening session, and I'm very, very privileged to be seated alongside Trivikraman Thampy. May I call you by your full name, Trivikraman? Are you good with that?
That's fine. I mean, nobody calls me by my full name, but that's
I thought
that's
as
all
much, which is why I was wondering whether I should go the formal way or is there a more informal way of
fine.
addressing?
I'm happy to be called Trivikraman.
Wonderful. So we'll go with that. So we thought we will pick the brains of a founder who has actually changed the science of gaming in India and across the globe. So warm welcome here. We'll be picking your brains a little bit. A few things that we would possibly be wanting to understand from Trivikraman here today during the course of the conversation is to understand how India is on the cusp of a very, very huge seismic digital shift, how technology stacks can be better utilized to bridge the digital divide, how various segments can contribute to this growth, this phenomenal growth that India is now witnessing, and how talent can be a big lever along with technology in taking the discourse further. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of quiz Trivikraman a little bit and get his insights. This is the opening conversation, so we're hoping our audiences can take away a lot as we end the session. So welcome, Trivikraman, and let me kind of begin asking you, what is the digital shift in Bharat that's really transforming the way businesses are thinking technology, the way they're rethinking their business models? So how do you really think this big digital shift has also impacted businesses such as yours?
So I think I'll try and break that question in a few parts. I think the digital transformation that we're seeing has impacted quite materially, both in terms of how businesses communicate with customers and also how they serve customers. So if you look at the communication side of things, I mean, we do a lot of digital advertising, and we've been doing that now since 2009. And Google and Meta have always been big, in terms of speaking to new potential customers. But one of the things that's changed in the last several years quite materially is, with the advent of social media, is influencers. I think there are now very powerful influencers, micro-influencers, that are driving how businesses speak to customers, particularly new potential customers. And this is particularly useful when it comes to tier 2, tier 3 cities, maybe even rural areas, because I think these influencers understand their local markets, local users very well, and they can speak to them in a way that you really can't through your Google ads or your Meta ads. And they're able to engage them and get them to potentially consider products that they otherwise usually wouldn't have considered. That's I think, been a very significant shift. We can see ourselves, we're, both in terms of time and dollars, we are allocating significant resources to influencers now. The other thing that's changing is how you communicate to existing customers. That change is far more recent. I mean, WhatsApp Business, for instance, is fairly new. It's been around only a few years. And already it has 400 million downloads. I think there's something like 175 million customers on a daily basis that businesses are speaking to through WhatsApp. We send out crores of messages through WhatsApp to our existing customers. So you can see that shift from email communication to something like WhatsApp. A lot of communication is obviously happening in-app now. There's a lot happening with AI, with intelligent bots in your app that can communicate, but certainly social media has also played a big role there. The last piece is, I think, how businesses are serving customers. I mean, without a doubt, I think everybody knows this, the biggest transformative technology there has been UPI, which is allowing businesses to serve customers everywhere, like even in the remotest parts of the country. But then there's also the massive power of personalization. in the bricks and mortar world, I really can't personalize things for users. It's just one experience for everyone. But in the online world, you can personalize people's shopping choices. You can personalize what entertainment they want to stream. You can personalize gaming entertainment choices for them. So I think there's been, I think a massive shift in how businesses are, engaging customers now because of the digital shift.
Sure. So you brought up some interesting points in terms of how the UPI has really kind of cut across, you know. So now that, the happy part is there is a certain amount of inclusive growth that has happened, triggered because of the digital payments ecosystem. On the other hand, in your opinion, what are those specific challenges you think that go beyond the urban areas, right? Technology has penetrated at X level in the urban side of things. But when you go into tier 2 and tier 3 and beyond that, when we talk rural, what do you think are the specific challenges that need to be navigated in terms of digital infrastructure? And how and what do you think are the specific ways in which we can look at inclusive growth? What's your take on that, Trivikraman?
Yeah, so I think infrastructure is definitely a challenge. Both in terms of internet speeds, even if you go as far down as rural, even in terms of smartphone adoption, it's still a challenge. There's last mile issues. And then there's obviously digital skilling issues. For instance, and I'm sure we'll talk about AI today. I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be skilling people to use AI. So I would say infrastructure, definitely a big challenge. It's going to require some pretty heavy investments from government and potentially government-private partnerships, but also the digital skilling bit. I think those are both important. But having said that, I'd say that to some extent, because of how rapidly telecom internet has grown, some of the pain that we may have experienced because of the lack of infrastructure is kind of going away. And I don't want to speak too soon, and I know that satellite internet seems around the corner, and it's likely going to be very expensive in the near term. But it could possibly be one of those things which kind of helps, like India skipped desktop totally, to mobile. Like that's how we grew the internet here. Maybe, just maybe satellite internet does the same thing for us, and we don't need to actually, lay down all those cables and build infrastructure at the rural level.
Sure, and I think perhaps then the rural populace can really skip the curve, right, and move right ahead.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Early days, but yeah, I'm thinking, no, at the rate, you made a very valid point. At the rate, a lot of technology, now the digital native generation has skipped a mass of what we, the earlier generations went through, right, from looking at the desktop to, a direct Philip, trajectory that we never had to go through, right? So I'm sure satellite internet could change things for the rural population, and this could be a game-changing story that the world can really look at, right? Yeah, sure. So further on, now that you mentioned AI, this is the flavor of the season. So when it comes to AI talent, right? You spoke about digital skilling. So AI gets added to the list for sure. So how do you think India can really look at AI talent? What are the ways in which we can attract and retain top talent? Because there's going to be massive competition from companies outside as well, from global tech companies. So what are the strategies and ways in which top AI talent can be kind of sustained and retained in the long run, short and long run? Your take on this?
I'm seeing AI and the impact of it real time. Like, I was in 2 meetings yesterday about using AI to build conversational analytics, do some creative intelligence work. And I think what's becoming, I have a slightly different take on skilling when it comes to AI. If you think about it, AI is allowing us to do more with less. And when I say less, I mean less people, less resources, not less resources, actually a lot more energy consumption, which is a whole another issue. But certainly on the people side, you're able to do more with less, and you're going to be able to do exponentially more with less. So I think at least in the last 20 years, we've talked a lot about tech talent being an issue, and it certainly has been a major issue in terms of, companies being able to move faster, getting talent. I think with AI, that's going to become somewhat lesser of an issue because you are able to do so much more with so much lesser. This doesn't mean that there is no skilling challenge, but I think the skilling challenge is going to be more on the mass human in the loop side. So we're not at a place anytime soon where AI can autonomously start to end run things. For instance, AI obviously for a country like India has huge applications on health and education in terms of delivering better health outcomes in poorer areas, in rural areas. But that's going to require a lot of human in the loops. Even if you have a doctor who's sitting in an urban center who can now, using AI, potentially deliver better health services to rural villages, you're going to need local health workers in those rural villages. You can't just have AI delivering all of it. And those rural health workers are going to need skilling to be able to use AI to deliver better health outcomes. The same is going to be true on education. AI is going to help a lot with personalization of education when it comes to rural areas, whether it's delivering, let's say, physics education in Tamil or Telugu or Marathi, it's also going to be able to help teachers, but then you're again going to need those teachers in the loop. They'll be helped enormously by AI, but they need still to be there to be able to use the AI tools to deliver education more efficiently to kids. I think that's the skilling part that's really, really important. Of course, there is the part about investment in deep tech and, and AI, but that's, at the end of the day, going to be a tiny fraction of the jobs. The vast number of jobs that we're talking about here where skilling is going to be required is actually using AI to deliver better outcomes.
Sure, absolutely. And you very rightly spoke about the fact that whatever be the technology, it will need that last mile human interface to make it successful, or rather to scale it with the impact that it desires to do. So that's a fantastic point. Also the fact that entrepreneurship and innovation when it comes to semi-rural or the semi-urban or the rural areas, what are the ways in which technology can help to relook or help entrepreneurship and innovation actually also become the torchbearers of technology? How does it work? Do they go hand in hand? What's your take on this?
You mean entrepreneurship in rural areas? I think, again, you're going to come to that skilling gap. See, I think it's going to be a little bit too much to expect that you're going to see entrepreneurship in rural areas building, deep tech or AI, real, hardcore AI solutions. But I think what's going to happen is once these AI tools start to become available in rural areas where people are able to see what their capabilities are, I think micro-innovation on top of that, taking these AI tools and micro-innovating to serve the needs of what their local users are. At the end of the day, a lot of the AI tools that are being built today, for instance, we have our Techspedite program, which is an incubate accelerator program. We see a lot of AI companies. They're all built at the end of the day by people who are sitting in urban areas. A lot of them are building solutions potentially for people in rural areas or in tier 2, tier 3 towns. But these are not necessarily people from those areas. So I think one of the things that potentially does happen as these tools start to go around, that there are micro innovations that happen on top of those tools, in smaller areas.
So there is talent, but the talent needs access to tools, right? In order to...
Absolutely.
Sure. So also the fact that you also brought out a very a reality check that, if we had to look at 2047 Tech Nirbhar, and Tech Nirbhar in terms of a Bharat standpoint, we'll also have to ensure that at a very micro level, people have access to technologies and tools, and it's at a sustained level. I think by 2047, it's going to be what? We are at 2025 now. 2 decades down the line, it's going to be one generation after. So it's a democratization of technology, basically, right? So let me come back to some of the things that you are looking at right now in terms of priorities. So what, in your view, you brought up UPI as a fantastic example, and you also spoke about the fact that hyperlocal payments, online gaming, these are all kind of dynamically shifting the market. What are some of the things you have thought of as priorities for the coming year? What do you see as your larger vision that you think could make that significant difference?
I mean, so it's interesting you mentioned UPI, hyperlocal commerce, gaming. I mean, if you think about it, what do all these things have in common? They're serving some very, very basic needs, like really basic needs. Transactions is the backbone of a modern economy. That's what UPI does. Hyperlocal commerce is your daily needs. You know, that's what it's meeting, and at a very rapid pace now with quick commerce. And then gaming is leisure entertainment, again, something that we all need, like, you know. So I think what that's done is that's really increased adoption of digital services. In terms of how we are thinking about the future, I mean, we're a gaming technology business. You know, our emphasis today is on exactly what I was telling you. So we're not, you know, we're not an AI business. We're not investing in deep tech and AI, but what we're doing is we're taking existing AI technology and seeing how we can use that to provide better infrastructure to our employees, but also better services to our users. So for instance, you know, one of the things we're doing right now is building a conversational analytics tool. You talked about the science of gaming. We're a very scientific business. We're very nerdy, data-centric. Everybody in our business, hundreds of people are running queries every day to pull some data out, to do some analysis. And we said, listen, this is all too complex. Like, why do people have to learn SQL to pull out data or talk to a BI engineer to get data? So what we're doing now, and actually we've done with the first phase of that project, we've built a conversational analytics tool where you can literally just type out in English what data you're looking for. I am looking for a particular cohort of customers from Karnataka that was acquired 3 months ago, and what is their spend pattern today and retention. You could literally write a query more or less like that, and the AI analytics tool will spit out the data. And then potentially over time, we also get to a point where it can also do the analysis for you. So those are the kind of solutions that we're investing in right now, where one, as I said, we start to make life much more efficient and productive for our employees, which eventually helps them obviously deliver better user experiences.
Sure. So if you really have to look at, if you know, this sort of a closing commentary is very essential, you know, for someone like you. Those 3 action points that you think startup founders should really be looking at, because you have come, you know, journeyed some way, some distance, and you are in a good position. You're well poised to talk about some of those 3 things that startup founders can really look at, A, and B, what are those key policy changes you think should really kind of fuel the startup growth, irrespective of industry? You can comment from a specific industry, but there's a universal, you know, sort of a take that you can give on this as well. So 2 things. One is, what can startup founders really look at, and what can be those policy changes? All yours.
Yeah. I mean, I speak to founders all the time. You know, we have our Techspedite accelerator program, and the first and most important thing I tell founders is always make sure that, you know, you have enough capital for worst case scenarios. I think most startups, you know, don't succeed because they just run out of capital. It's not that they run out of motivation. There are obviously cases where the core business model itself doesn't work. You might lose motivation, but a lot of that usually happens because you just run out of capital. One of the things that we as a business have, you know, always done is, hey, like, this is how I think the world will play out. But what if it doesn't? What if it plays out much worse than that? And do I have enough capital to survive in that scenario? I think that is probably the number one thing. The other thing I would say is be willing to abandon hard-held beliefs. I think, entrepreneurs by definition are very passionate. They really believe in their ideas, but I think sometimes it's important to pay attention to what the world is telling you, and sometimes you just have to change what you thought would work. There are many pivots that we have done in our business over the course of our lifetime, things that we thought would work really well and just did not. And it's hard because it challenges your ego, and founders have big egos. It challenges core notions you had, but if the data is telling you you're wrong, you got to be willing to abandon your hard-held beliefs. In terms of policy, I think, again, coming back to AI, I think the biggest thing, obviously we need a lot of investment in computing and storage. AI is all about massive amounts of data, massive computations. Everybody knows how much NVIDIA has benefited from that. So I think we'll need a lot of investment on that front. And I think we need a lot of support from the government on that side. But I think a big part of it is, and again, I bring up our accelerator program again and again, we're seeing so many innovative startups right now. And of course they need capital, but they also need a lot of mentoring. So what we're doing in our program, obviously we want to provide the best startups with capital, but we're actually spending the most precious resource that entrepreneurs and companies have, which is time. I have spent 10, 15 hours personally with startups trying to help them kind of fine-tune their idea. There are brilliant ideas out there. 2 startups that I can talk about. One that's working on gaming technology to cure diabetes, obesity, depression. They're in very advanced stages of their technology. They've actually tested it on a few people. It's showing great results. But these people need guidance and mentorship on how to actually build a business out of something that's obviously super sexy and cool. On the other side, there are some very unsexy models, but that have great applications. We've seen a startup that's building solutions in terms of training medical representatives and how they speak to doctors, and training bank reps and how they speak to the public. Now, it doesn't sound very cool, but the implications for the economy as a whole are significant. There are so many people in those professions who are unable to communicate properly with the people that they have to communicate with, whether it be doctors or people who they want to sell bank accounts to, and they're building AI technology to train these people. Not very sexy sounding, but again, tremendous application. So I think providing a platform to these kind of startups, both in terms of mentoring, but also the infrastructure for them to grow their business, is something that's going to be critical.
Absolutely, well said. I think at the end of it, it's about impact, scale, use cases, and then finally monetization, right?
Absolutely.
It has to be monetized, if not anything else at the end of it, right? So great. I think in the interest of time, I can see we have possibly slightly overstepped time, but great conversation, Trivikraman. Your name, kind of, at the end of it, I think I'm suffering from mild dyslexia by the time I get your name. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was
Thank
a great
you,
conversation. And more follow-ups. We'll pick your brains, or my team will stay in touch with you. But this was a great start to the summit. Thank you so much.